The rise of Marxist communism stands as one of the most transformative intellectual and political developments in modern history, reshaping societies, economies, and international relations through its revolutionary vision of a classless world. Conceived in the mid-19th century, this ideology emerged as a critique of industrial capitalism, evolving into a global movement that profoundly influenced nations, most notably through its unexpected implementation in Russia in 1917. Rooted in the radical ferment of Western Europe, particularly London, Marxist communism was shaped by a complex interplay of philosophical inquiry, economic analysis, and revolutionary activism, with significant contributions from émigré networks and organizations like the League of Outlaws and League of the Just. The diverse backgrounds of its proponents, the pivotal role of its foundational texts, and the speculative possibility of hidden influences, ranging from secret societies to financial elites, invite a detailed exploration of its origins, motivations, and enduring impact. This essay provides a comprehensive and expansive analysis of Marxist communism's formation, examining its intellectual foundations, its intended application in industrialized societies, its spread to Russia, the dynamics of its key figures, and the potential for unrecorded contributors, while critically assessing alternative narratives and speculative influences. This essay ensures clarity, objectivity, and accessibility, weaving a narrative that captures the multifaceted history of communism's development and global resonance. Intellectual and organizational foundations of Marxist communism. Marxist communism originated from the intellectual partnership of Karl Marx, a German philosopher and economist of mixed Jewish and Christian descent raised as a non-practicing Lutheran, and Friedrich Engels, a German philosopher and industrialist of Protestant Christian background. Their collaboration began in the 1840s amidst the social and economic upheavals of industrial Europe. Marx, born in 1818 in Trier, Prussia, pursued studies in law, philosophy, and history at the universities of Bonn, Berlin, and Jena, where he engaged with the young Hegelians, a group of radicals inspired by the dialectical philosophy of Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, a German philosopher. His early exposure to radical ideas, combined with his journalistic work at the Rheinische Zeitung in Cologne, shaped his critique of capitalist exploitation and state oppression. Engels, born in 1820 in Barmen, Prussia, brought a practical perspective, having observed the harsh realities of industrial labor while working at his family's textile mill in Manchester, England. Their meeting in Paris in 1844, following an initial encounter in Cologne in 1842, marked the beginning of a lifelong alliance that produced the foundational texts of communism, blending rigorous theory with revolutionary zeal. The ideology of Marxist communism synthesized a rich tapestry of philosophical, economic, and socialist currents. Marx adapted Hegel's dialectics into historical materialism, positing that history is propelled by class struggles over material resources, a framework that grounded his analysis of societal change in economic realities. The materialism of Ludwig Feuerbach, a German philosopher, influenced Marx's rejection of religious and idealistic frameworks, emphasizing human conditions as the driver of social transformation. Economically, Marx drew on the classical theories of Adam Smith, a Scottish economist, and David Ricardo, a British economist of Portuguese Sephardic Jewish descent, developing the concept of surplus value, which argues that workers' labor generates profit for capitalists, perpetuating systemic exploitation. Socialist thinkers like Charles Fourier and Henri de Saint-Simon, both French philosophers, inspired Marx's vision of collective ownership, though he critiqued their utopianism for lacking a revolutionary strategy. The radical egalitarianism of Gracchus Babeuf, a French revolutionary, further shaped Marx's focus on class-based upheaval, advocating for the overthrow of capitalist structures. Engels complemented Marx's theoretical rigor with empirical observations, notably in The Condition of the Working Class in England, published in 1845, which documented the squalor and exploitation in Manchester's industrial slums, providing a vivid backdrop to their critique. The seminal work of this intellectual partnership, the Communist Manifesto, published in 1848, was commissioned by the Communist League, a London-based organization of German émigrés that evolved from the secretive League of the Just. This concise yet powerful document outlined a program of class struggle, proletarian revolution, and the abolition of private property in the means of production, targeting industrialized societies like Britain where class disparities were most pronounced. Das Kapital, with its first volume published in 1867, offered a meticulous economic analysis of capitalism's internal contradictions, predicting its inevitable collapse and the rise of socialism. Supporting texts, including the German ideology, written between 1845 and 1846, The Civil War in France, published in 1871, and Critique of the Gotha Program, published in 1875, elaborated on historical materialism, the role of the proletariat, and the transition to a classless, stateless society. By 1867, with the publication of Das Kapital, Marxism had matured into a comprehensive theoretical system, poised for implementation when capitalist crises and proletarian organization converged. The League of Outlaws, active from 1834 to 1838, and the League of the Just, active from 1836 to 1847, were critical precursors to the Communist League, embodying the radical aspirations of German émigrés exiled from the German Confederation. The League of Outlaws, founded in Paris by Jacob Venedig, a German lawyer, Theodor Schuster, a German intellectual, and Wilhelm Weitling, a German tailor, sought to establish a social republic, blending republican ideals with utopian socialism inspired by the revolutionary vision of Philippe Buonarroti, an Italian radical. Comprising approximately 180 artisans and intellectuals, primarily from Prussia and Bavaria, the League operated clandestinely, using secret rituals to evade authorities. Internal divisions over strategy, moderates favoring reform versus radicals advocating revolution, led to its dissolution by 1838, with Weitling and others forming the League of the Just. This splinter group, peaking at over 1,000 members and led by Weitling, Karl Schopper, a German forester, and Joseph Moll, a German watchmaker, initially embraced Christian communism, as articulated in Weitling's Guarantees of Harmony and Freedom, published in 1842, before adopting Marx's secular socialism in 1847. These organizations, rooted in the émigré experience of political persecution and economic displacement, provided the organizational impetus for the Communist Manifesto, commissioning Marx and Engels to unify their revolutionary vision. London as the intellectual and revolutionary hub. London served as the intellectual crucible for Marxist communism's development in the 1840s and 1860s, reflecting its role as the heart of industrial capitalism and a haven for political exiles. Britain's Industrial Revolution transformed its economy, with factories, railways, and urbanization creating a substantial proletariat, constituting 30% of the workforce by 1850, and stark class disparities that Marx critiqued. London's slums, teeming with impoverished workers, stood in sharp contrast to the opulent wealth of industrialists and aristocrats, exemplifying capitalist exploitation. The British Museum's extensive economic records, including factory reports, enabled Marx's rigorous research for Das Kapital, while the city's vibrant émigré community, encompassing German, French, Italian, and other radicals, fostered a dynamic network of revolutionary ideas. The Communist League, based in Soho's German Workers' Educational Society, provided a platform for the Communist Manifesto, while groups like the Fraternal Democrats facilitated cross-cultural exchanges with British radicals, such as the Chartists, led by figures like George Julian Harney, an English journalist. Marx and Engels anticipated a proletarian revolution in Britain, Germany, or France, where advanced capitalism and class consciousness were most developed, as articulated in their seminal work. Despite these conditions, communism failed to ignite a revolution in London or Western Europe. Britain's economic prosperity, with skilled workers earning 20 to 30 shillings weekly by 1870, and legislative reforms, such as the Factory Acts of 1833 to 1878 that limited work hours, alleviated some labor grievances, reducing revolutionary fervor. The expansion of parliamentary democracy through the Reform Act of 1867 allowed dissent to be channeled into electoral politics, while trade unions and the nascent Labour Party, established in 1900, promoted reformist socialism over radical upheaval. Cultural factors, including British nationalism and the influence of Christianity, tempered the appeal of Marxist class-based rhetoric, and government surveillance effectively suppressed radical movements, as evidenced by the crackdowns on Chartist uprisings in 1848. In Germany, the Social Democratic Party adopted Marxist principles but prioritized electoral success, securing 20% of votes by 1890, which diluted revolutionary momentum. France, despite socialist activism led by figures like Louis Blanc, a French journalist, maintained stable governance, preventing Marxist implementation. The stability and reformist tendencies of Western Europe thus thwarted communism's revolutionary aspirations, redirecting its trajectory elsewhere. The German émigrés: identity, motivations, and revolutionary networks. The German émigrés who formed the League of Outlaws and League of the Just were primarily artisans and intellectuals from Prussia, Bavaria, and other German states within the German Confederation, driven into exile by political persecution and economic hardship. The Confederation's repressive policies, codified in the Carlsbad Decrees of 1819, targeted liberal and radical activists following the July Revolution of 1830 in France and the failed Frankfurt Parliament attack of 1833. Artisans, such as tailors and shoemakers, faced economic displacement due to industrialization, which eroded traditional crafts and reduced wages by 10 to 15% in the 1830s. Intellectuals like Venedi and Schuster were censored for advocating republicanism and socialism, risking imprisonment or worse. Identified by their political activities, publishing subversive pamphlets, joining band groups like the Burschenschaften, or attending protests such as the Hambach Festival of 1832, these émigrés fled to Paris, which hosted 40,000 to 50,000 Germans by 1835, and later to London, a liberal haven with 7,000 émigrés by 1852. The ethnic composition of these émigrés was predominantly German, reflecting the cultural and linguistic unity of the German states. Their religious identity was overwhelmingly Christian, encompassing Lutheran and Catholic traditions, which aligned with the Confederation's dominant religious culture. The League of Outlaws, with approximately 180 members, and the League of the Just, peaking at over 1,000, were artisan-based, drawing from Christian-dominated guilds that historically excluded Jewish craftsmen due to anti-Semitic restrictions. No documented members of either league were of Jewish descent, and the Christian communist ideology of the League of the Just, as articulated by Weitling, further limited Jewish participation. However, the broader émigré milieu included Jewish radicals like Moses Hess, a German philosopher of Jewish descent, who contributed to socialist thought in intellectual circles but not within the leagues. In Germany, individuals of Jewish descent constituted 1 to 2% of the population, approximately 200,000 in 1830, a proportion mirrored in Paris, 1% of 1 million, and London, 0.5 to 1% of 2.5 million, where they were primarily merchants or intellectuals. This demographic pattern underscores the historical tendency of Jewish communities to form small, integrated minorities within larger populations, often facing discrimination but contributing to radical movements in secular contexts. The émigrés' flight was driven by a combination of political persecution, economic hardship, and danger. Political radicals faced arrest or execution, as seen in Weitling's 1835 detention in Paris, while artisans sought better prospects in industrial cities, though many endured poverty in London's Soho slums. London's appeal lay in its relative freedom from censorship, contrasting with the German state's authoritarianism and France's post-1839 expulsions of radicals. The émigrés' revolutionary zeal, fueled by their exile experience, led to the formation of the Leagues, which channeled their grievances into socialist activism. The League of the Just had direct contact with Marx and Engels, commissioning the Communist Manifesto in 1847, while the League of Outlaws, dissolving by 1838, had indirect contact through shared members like Weitling and Schopper, who later joined the Just and engaged Marx. The commission and authorship of the Communist Manifesto. The Communist League, formed in June 1847 through the merger of the League of the Just and Marx and Engels Communist Correspondence Committee, commissioned Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels to write the Communist Manifesto at its Second Congress in London, held at the German Workers' Educational Society from November to December 1847. This commission was a pivotal moment, as the League sought a clear, accessible program to unify its diverse membership and distinguish itself from other socialist factions amid the brewing revolutions of 1848. Marx, a formidable theorist with a background in young Hegelian philosophy and journalism, dominated Congress debates, securing support for his materialist program over utopian or conspiratorial alternatives. Engels, a League member since 1846, endorsed Marx's leadership, contributing preliminary drafts such as Principles of Communism, published in 1847, which served as a foundation for the manifesto. Published in February 1848 in German, the manifesto articulated a revolutionary vision of class struggle, proletarian uprising, and the abolition of private property, becoming a cornerstone of communist ideology. The authorship credit for the Communist Manifesto is attributed to Marx and Engels due to their intellectual and literary contributions. Marx wrote the final draft, synthesizing the League's egalitarian ethos with his scientific socialism, while Engels provided structural input and earlier drafts. The League's role was organizational, commissioning the text and inspiring its revolutionary spirit, but its artisan members, such as Schopper and Moll, lacked the theoretical depth to draft a comprehensive manifesto. The manifesto's global resonance, amplified by Marx's later works like Das Kapital and his leadership in the First International, tied it to their names. The League's dissolution by 1852, due to repression following the 1848 revolutions, and its secondary role as a commissioning body explain its omission from popular credit, though scholarly accounts acknowledge its contribution. The commission was essential, as it provided the impetus for a public manifesto, aligning with the revolutionary fervor of 1848. Without it, Marx and Engels might have continued theoretical work, but the manifesto's unique form and timing likely depended on the League's request. The Russian Revolution: Leadership, Ethnic Diversity, and Global Impact. The Bolshevik Revolution of October 1917 marked the first significant implementation of Marxist communism, transforming Russia from a semi-feudal empire into a socialist state. Russia's unexpected role, despite its agrarian economy and small proletariat, for percent urban in 1860, stemmed from extraordinary circumstances. World War I, from 1914 to 1918, inflicted 2 million deaths, famine, and economic collapse, radicalizing workers, soldiers, and peasants. The February Revolution of 1917 overthrew Tsar Nicholas II, but the provisional government's failure to end the war or address land reform created a power vacuum. Vladimir Lenin's Bolsheviks, a faction of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party founded in 1898, seized power in Petrograd, establishing the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, which became the Soviet Union in 1922. Lenin's Marxist-Leninism adapted Marxism to Russia's conditions, emphasizing a vanguard party to lead the proletariat and incorporating peasants, who formed 80% of the population, as revolutionary allies. The Decree on Land, issued in November 1917, redistributed aristocratic estates, aligning with Marxist principles of property abolition, while nationalization of banks, railways, and industries implemented collectivization. War communism, from 1918 to 1921, centralized the economy during the Russian Civil War, and the new economic policy, introduced in 1921, allowed limited market reforms to stabilize it, showcasing Marxism's adaptability. The Soviet Union's success inspired communist movements in China, achieving victory in 1949, Cuba, achieving victory in 1959, and beyond, facilitated by the Comintern, active from 1919 to 1943. The Bolshevik leadership reflected Russia's ethnic diversity, encompassing individuals of varied backgrounds united by Marxist ideology. Vladimir Lenin, born Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov in 1870, was of Russian, Kalmyk, German, and Swedish descent, raised in a nominally Orthodox family but an avowed atheist. Leon Trotsky, born Lev Davidovich Bronstein in 1879, hailed from a secular Jewish family in Ukraine, rejecting religious identity for Marxism. Joseph Stalin, born Ioseb Jugashvili in 1878, was Georgian, trained in an Orthodox seminary but embracing atheism. Grigory Zinoviev, born Hersh Apfelbaum in 1883, and Lev Kamenev, born Lev Rosenfeld in 1883 with a partially Jewish background, were from secular Jewish families, while Yakov Sverdlov, born in 1885, also came from a Jewish family, all identifying as Marxist atheists. Felix Dzerzhinsky, born in 1877 of Polish Catholic origin, and Nikolai Bukharin, born in 1888 in Moscow of Russian descent, were similarly secular. Jewish leaders constituted approximately 20 to 25% of the Central Committee from 1917 to 1922, higher than their 4% population share, reflecting radicalization from anti-Semitic oppression, but the majority were of Russian, Georgian, or other ethnicities. This diversity underscores the Bolsheviks' universalist ideology, transcending ethnic or religious affiliations. The implementation of communism in Russia benefited key figures and groups. Lenin wielded supreme authority until 1924, shaping the Soviet state. Trotsky led the Red Army to victory in the Civil War, gaining prominence until his 1929 exile. Stalin consolidated power as general secretary, becoming dictator by the late 1920s with access to state resources. Zinoviev, Kamenev, and Sverdlov held leadership roles, enjoying privileges until purges in the 1930s. The nomenklatura, party elites, secured better housing and rations, while urban workers gained initial workplace control, education, and labor protections, though war communism's hardships limited benefits. Peasants acquired land via the Decree on Land, but collectivization in the late 1920s caused devastating famines. Internationally, leaders like Mao Zedong in China and Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam emulated Russia's model, supported by the Comintern, while European communists like Ernst Thälmann, a German labor organizer, and Palmiro Togliatti, an Italian intellectual, gained influence, though constrained by local conditions. Exploring potential influences and alternative narratives. The global impact of Marxist communism, transforming nations, empowering leaders, and sparking ideological conflicts, prompts inquiry into potential hidden contributors beyond Marx and Engels. London's radical milieu in the 1840s to 1860s, characterized by secret societies, fraternal organizations, émigré networks, and intellectual exchanges, suggests the possibility of unrecorded influences, particularly given the secretive nature of some groups and the complex dynamics of the era. The League of Outlaws and League of the Just were central to communism's early development, rooted in the experiences of German émigrés fleeing political and economic turmoil. The Outlaws, with leaders like Venedig, Schuster, and Weitling, operated clandestinely in Paris, advocating a social republic through utopian socialism. The Just, a splinter group led by Weitling, Schapperer, and Moll, embraced Christian communism before adopting Marx's secular socialism, commissioning the Communist Manifesto to unify its vision. These groups, composed of Christian German artisans, lacked documented Jewish members, reflecting guild restrictions and ideological focus. However, the broader émigré community included Jewish radicals like Hess, who influenced Engels but operated outside the leagues. The League's direct engagement with Marx and Engels, particularly the Just Commission, was crucial, but their indirect influence through shared networks, such as the Fraternal Democrats, shaped the radical landscape. London's secret societies and fraternal organizations offer a lens for exploring speculative influences. The German Workers' Educational Society served as a hub for the League of the Just, hosting Marx's lectures and the 1847 congresses. The Fraternal Democrats connected German émigrés with British Chartists, fostering socialist ideas. Buonarroti's Universal Democratic Carbonari inspired the League's clandestine structures, while Young Europe networks, led by Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian revolutionary, promoted nationalism with indirect socialist ties. No evidence links the League to Freemasons, Odd Fellows, or the Loge de Philadelphie, despite speculative claims. Allegations of Illuminati influence are anachronistic, as the group dissolved in 1785 and lack primary sources. Theories suggesting Rothschild funding or a Jewish plot behind communism are endorsed by some researchers but lack acceptance among most prominent scholars, possibly supported by unauthenticated or disputed material, and are often associated with anti-Semitic narratives, such as the contested Protocols of the Elders of Zion published in 1903, with their validity debated based on the differing directions of study or bias. The Rothschilds' Bank, a financial powerhouse in 1848 led by Lionel de Rothschild, a British banker of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, had no documented direct ties to the League or Marx, whose poverty and anti-capitalist critique contradict such claims. Religious influences were limited. The League of the Just's early Christian communism drew on egalitarian traditions, but no institutional religious ties existed. Marx's atheism and materialist philosophy, evident in On the Jewish Question, published in 1843, excluded overt religious input, and no Jewish religious connections are documented. Speculative claims of Christian or Jewish communalism shaping communism lack evidence, as Marxism's secularism prevailed. Business or government connections are absent, with the League relying on member dues and Engels support, not elite funding or state backing. Alternative narratives enrich the inquiry into Marxist communism's origins, suggesting a multifaceted origin story beyond the standard account of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels as primary authors. Communism likely emerged from a convergence of socialist, anarchist, and labor currents, with a communist league, evolving from the secretive League of the Just, providing organizational impetus, though Marx's synthesis of these ideas was central, potentially incorporating minor inputs from London's émigré networks, such as the Chartists or Fraternal Democrats. Speculation that secret societies or elite groups used Marx as a proxy to advance a hidden agenda lacks substantiation, as his transparent writings, poverty, and the League's artisan base indicate intellectual autonomy, undermining claims of orchestrated conspiracies like those tied to the Rothschilds or Illuminati. Marx's savant-like intellect and zealous commitment to revolutionary ideology, bolstered by Engels' financial support and empirical contributions, drove communism's development, though collaborative influences from radical circles shaped its early phase, highlighting the complex interplay of individual dedication and collective radicalism in its formation. The League of the Just's commission was pivotal, ensuring the Communist Manifesto's creation and amplifying communism's global impact. Without it, the manifesto might not have emerged in 1848, potentially delaying or fragmenting socialist movements, though Marx's independent writings, such as Das Kapital, would likely persist. The Russian Revolution's success, driven by Lenin's adaptations and Russia's crises, underscores communism's adaptability, with its diverse leadership reflecting ideological unity over ethnic identity. Marxist communism, forged in the intellectual and revolutionary ferment of 19th-century London, represents a profound synthesis of philosophical, economic, and socialist ideas, articulated by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Its intended implementation in industrialized Western Europe faltered due to economic stability and reformist socialism, but its triumph in Russia in 1917, led by a diverse Bolshevik leadership, reshaped global history. The German émigrés, primarily Christian artisans from Prussia and Bavaria, formed the League of Outlaws and League of the Just, catalyzing communism's early development through their commission of the Communist Manifesto. The League's Christian and German character, with no documented Jewish members, reflects their artisan focus, while the broader émigré milieu included Jewish radicals like Hess, contributing to socialism's intellectual currents. Marx's authorship earned him primary credit for the manifesto, overshadowing the League's organizational role, though its commission was decisive. Speculative influences, secret societies, Rothschilds, or religious groups, remain unproven, with historical evidence affirming Marx and Engels' intellectual leadership amid émigré radicalism. Communism's global resonance, from Russia to China, underscores its adaptability, driven by the interplay of ideas, revolutionary networks, and historical contingencies, offering a complex legacy that continues to provoke rigorous inquiry and reflection.